Hey everybody out there, my name is Dragnix, and as a way to sort of interact with you guys more and get an understanding of what you guys want in terms of coverage, many of you may know that I have started sort of a fan vote program on the channel. Basically, I take a couple of games that are going to come out in a certain week, and I ask you guys to vote on what you would like to see covered. Now, this is the first game in question, XCOM2, and I will be doing a full review of that. However, with some of the conflicting reports that have been coming out regarding performance, regarding the gameplay, I did want to get my first impressions out there to give you guys a little bit of information in case if you're really wanting to, pull the trigger on a purchase right now. This will be more of a rambling format because of the fact that I'll be doing a formal review at this point. Now, XCOM 2. It's basically XCOM 1 with a nice coat of paint on it. There's a lot of similar mechanics. There is a lot of, holdover for the franchise from XCOM Enemy Unknown. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. However, in the first 4 hours, I was a little bit surprised on how similar it plays to XCOM Enemy Unknown. Now, not to say that there isn't any differences. There are little changes here and there, especially when it comes to the upgrade system. But overall, if you were an XCOM Enemy Unknown fan and wanted more of it, guess what? XCOM 2 is going to give that to you. One of the differences you will notice at first in XCOM 2 is its tone difference from XCOM Enemy Unknown. Now, XCOM Enemy Unknown had a good story, even though it was, scattered about, but the basic idea was there are these aliens, you don't know where they're from, you don't know who they are, but all you know is that they're trying to take over at this point. And you do discover a little bit as you go along in terms of, their sort of, objectives to take over your world. But in XCOM 2, it's a bit different. XCOM 2, the aliens are in control. They are the ones, running things. And in particular, there are humans that will be fighting you because of the fact that they're on the alien side. They've been modified in certain ways. Some of them have been mind controlled, so on and so forth. I do like the resistance angle for XCOM 2. I like the fact that you have to sort of fight for these resources and that, there are reasons for people not to get involved at this point, and I can understand that. But you have these, resistance fighters all coming together and trying to figure out how do we, take out this alien army and use guerrilla warfare tactics of sorts. With that said, I feel like the game also has its moments where it's trying a little bit too hard to connect the game to Enemy Unknown. For example, the snake person you may have seen in the trailers, there is a sort of revelation that comes into a connection in the earlier game. I won't spoil it, but when I heard it, I was like, wait, what? That makes absolutely no sense, especially when it became clear that the enemy in question didn't necessarily have to hide at a certain point in that game. So I was confused by it, and I feel like it tries a little bit too hard to try to explain things in this world when it should just sort of, take the fact that it's sci-fi, take the fact that, yeah, there's going to be things that it can't explain, and just sort of let them go. Now, for the meat of the game in terms of combat, what's a little bit weird here is that the mechanics are pretty much the same. You still have the cover system and the movement system as before. You still have specialists and special abilities like the sniper, or, we do have a melee class at this point that feels a little bit different. But the thing is that the missions are a little bit different. What I've noticed early on in particular is that there's a lot of time limit missions. And in particular, that is a little bit different from the original game. And one thing that I remember from the original game is how overpowered Overwatch felt for me. Now, in this case, Overwatch, I can't keep on using Overwatch in this case because I have to get to the mission's end at this point. So I do sort of like that change. However, a lot of the sort of difficulty is the fact that you'll probably finish those missions with 1 or 2 turns left. And so there isn't a lot of room to be flexible in those early missions, at least in my opinion. Now, with that said, there are missions like this one, for example, where I can be a little bit more patient and just go after the enemy in question at my own pace. One of the big things I've loved about XCOM 2 in terms of an improvement from XCOM 1 is the customization options for your soldiers. And in particular, I think it works rather well because you become connected with your soldiers. You don't want to see these guys die, which they will die. There's certain points you will get hit by a grenade and you may reload over and over again, but sooner or later you'll run into a situation where it's like, okay, I'm going to have to lose somebody in order to be able to complete this mission. And that connection really works for me. I like the fact that you can color your guns and add skins onto them. I like the fact that I can give them unique code names and things like that. So it is nice to see that they've improved that sort of immersion factor here that I don't necessarily think was in the original game. Now, one of the reasons why I wanted to make a video today, a quick video, is the performance problems that are being reported, and I wanted to get my experience out there. I have seen performance problems, and I've also seen game-breaking bugs in terms of crashes, and in terms of, at one point, the sound completely went out for me. And there are little problems here and there. You'll notice here, it's taking a while for the enemies to react, and that's sort of a common theme at times, where it's taking a little bit too long for them to actually do something. Now, in terms of actual frame rate performance, what's weird here is that I'm perfectly fine in battle. I don't seem to have those problems. But when it comes to like the upgrade menus, when it comes to cutscenes, when it comes to loading screens, that's where I see a whole shitload of problems at this point in terms of the game stopping, trying to, catch up to itself, and then, finally getting to a reasonable frame rate. But it seems like the action is unaffected. So if you're looking for the combat portion, I haven't seen the problems. Now, again, I've got a 980 Ti, 16 gigs of RAM, and 3.2 8-core. There's some pretty beefy specs behind this, so keep that in mind if you are making a decision based on my experience. And the reports are seemingly consistent about frame rate drops and things like that, and in terms of, in particular, the sound element of the game. There seems to be a problem with sound drivers, and I'm not exactly sure what's going on. A lot of the people that I've talked to in terms of, like, for example, one of the people I work with at Tech Raptor has been hearing this crackling sound outside of the cutscenes that it would be appropriate. What I mean by appropriate there is that you've got those radio transmissions that are coming in, and it's sort of doing that static thing. Okay, you could expect some crackling, but even outside of those elements, you can see some problems there. This game has a layer of polish that needs to be added to it, and I felt like, again, we've got a game that maybe came out a little bit too soon. Now, I will say, compared to other ports that we've seen lately, the Naruto Ultimate Storm 4, I think it is, Batman Arkham Knight, things like that, this is way beyond those in terms of quality. Yes, there is a good element here, and a lot of people are going to be okay in terms of the performance, but I am still seeing problems even on my side. Now, with that said, there is going to be a lot of hotfixes and maybe some new drivers that are coming out in the coming days at this point, very similar to all the other releases. And I will say that at least the basis here, I'm less concerned about the problems being there within like 2 weeks or 3 weeks' time. However, if you are planning on buying the game right now, rest assured, I think you are going to see some problems until those first issues are sort of hammered out at this point. Again, I just wanted to get my first thoughts out there at this point. I will be doing a formal review, and it is Friday, so I will be, taking pretty much the entire weekend to try to get the review done and have it to you guys done on Monday at this point. Now, I will have the Steam poll, straw poll for the next game I cover next week in the description below. That will end in terms of the poll by tonight. I would have ended it yesterday, but it was tied at the time of looking at it and being like, okay, I need a tiebreaker at this point. I'll also put the next poll for the week after next in terms of the game to cover there. There's not a lot of big games coming out at that time, so keep that in mind. Alright, this is Dragnix signing out. I hope you got an idea of what I first thought about XCOM 2, and again, the full review will be coming, hopefully on Monday, depending on how much progress I make in today and tomorrow. Alright, I will see you all later. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you want to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button in the middle of the screen. The last video I did will be in the top left, and a related video to this will be in the top right. I do have a Twitter handle at the bottom left, and a Facebook page at the bottom right. And of course, you can always subscribe to the Google Plus portion. Anyway, thanks for watching, and keep on gaming.